All right. Good evening. Good evening. It is Monday, June 17th, 2024. It is 6:59 PM. This is a meeting of the Oaks Public School Board, a regular board meeting. And we're meeting in the central office conference room. All board members present, and we'll start by saying the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The agenda was in your packet, might even be laying in front of you. So I don't believe there are any changes we need to do at this time. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented in your packet? So moved. Nagel moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Sire seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion passes. Welcome visitors. We have staff with Superintendent Sell and Business Manager Jepson, who are not really visitors. We have our two principals who are joining us this summer, even though they're not paid to do so, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And joining us via Zoom, we have Andrea Johnson, our special ed director, and we have our coach, Sue Dygard. And Marcia's not joining? No? No, you're muted, but you're going like this, so I'm assuming. All right, so welcome everyone, and we will, we have one communication, well, we'll do two communications. We did get a thank you to Shannon Jepson and the Oaks School District, a thank you from Interstate Bus for buying a bus from them. So great news. And do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, so we got an award from the state of North Dakota for innovative education because of our belonging to the PCBL. So went out to Bismarck to get to that today and get the award. So
Oh, I thought that was in Dickinson.
no,
Oh, wasn't as long a day as I thought.
no, it wasn't. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah.
Okay, so our official PCBL cohort is concluded, but we continue the implementation of the work here.
Yes, and we still belong to the cohort, or we're going to carry on the work and hopefully bring more and more schools to it. So
Okay, well, hopefully we will be getting great results with our student outcome goals through our efforts. Any other communication? If not, we'll move on to goal progress monitoring. Sel,
great. Okay.
back to you.
Yeah, so this month is student outcome goal 1. We have preliminary numbers, just so you know, for this goal, but they will change. And I think I wrote that for you in the cover packet in the packet. I wrote it on the cover sheet just so that you know we'll have those numbers for you come this fall. And last year, what we had for our unofficial numbers were actually lower than the official numbers because there are some kids that are included in those numbers that have not been in our district, and they have to be in our district for a certain amount of time, a certain number of consecutive days. So once we have those numbers, then I'll report in September on the outcome goal where we're at on that. But to look at our progress measures, if you remember right, we talked last time that I did the report on goal 1 that looking at the last couple of years that we tend to fall back down in the spring. So Greg, Jordan, and I visited, and we've been working with our staff, and the staff agreed with us that wasn't really what we wanted to see happen this spring. So we changed our adult behavior, and they went to their staffs and said, we need to make sure that we have the kids prepared to see this test. We normally fall down in the spring, and let's try to combat that the best that we can. And every one of our groups, you can see, ended up actually doing better in the spring than they did in the winter. So just changing, it's amazing, when you make yourself aware of stuff and you talk about it, and we knew what was happening, we didn't want it to happen, the things that you can do just by changing our behaviors, just like we've learned. So if K through 2, 3 through 6, And 7 through 10, they ended up exceeding their goals that we set for ourselves. So we're above the goals that we had. And it all looks just really good where we were at, ended up at this spring. So it's Mr. Dobitz will do a deeper dive here in just a minute, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the fact that, you know, we looked at our data and we made sure that we were aware of where we were at, and we tried to change our behaviors. But some of the things that are coming up next for 1.1 and 1.2, we're offering summer AR, and it's to all students. And we all know that over the summer, super important that they stay engaged with school, and, you know, that's about our only touch that we have with them. So we're promoting, you know, that we want our kids to read, to avoid that dreaded summer slide. We purchased Science of Reading online resources for grades 3 through 6. That was when Greg got that big grant, that $50,000 grant, and then he and his team went, I forget, Fargo. Yep. Fargo, they went to Fargo, they looked at the materials, they decided what they wanted to buy, and they ended up buying CKLA. And we scheduled professional development in the fall, and we're going to be doing some of that all during the school year on our our late starts. And we're going to be looking at our data in Renaissance, because it was like a light came on, and, you know, we were visiting that we have Renaissance, we have STAR, we're using it, right? But as adults, we aren't really looking at that data, and we have brand new teachers, and we have teachers that haven't ever had training through it. And why have we not done that before? So we're going to start to do that so that we can use our data and we can use our programs, because we spend $20-some thousand just in the elementary alone, and we're not using that data and all of the programs to their full potential, and we're spending that kind of money, and our focus is on that. So we're going to be offering more PD for that. But 1.3, similar, the high school students are also offered summer AR. We don't have quite as high of an attendance of summer high school kids coming in, but again, hoping that they participate to help the summer slide. The high school still continue to use Freckle as an intervention, and there were some board questions on that Jordan answered. But again, you know, when they do their deeper dive, ask him some of those questions. Professional development, we have our preliminary scores, but we're waiting to share those out. And then we've talked, you know, we're going to see what happens with our K through 6 Science of Reading aligned, and look to see, you know, possibly moving up to 7 through 10 at getting our resources aligned with that piece of it. So do you have questions for me, because, or for those guys, or do you want to hear what they have to say?
I'm the question asker tonight.
Okay.
Okay, can you explain more about the Science of Reading and how that would improve, how it improves the reading scores?
That is a really good question. So, and Greg, you can chime in the training. So the way that we teach read has changed so much over the years. You have like whole language, where everything was done in reading, and we taught all those pieces. We didn't teach phonics, and probably some of you and myself, we learned how to read by phonics. It's like this pendulum that swings back and forth. But we have so much more research on how the brain works and how it develops and how kids learn to read. And so with the Science of Reading, we take some of those pieces, but we also take from practice, you know, research and seeing that, you know, we have to be very prescriptive, and we have to teach the kids phonics. Even if they're readers, we still need to give them those skills in order so that they can decode as words start to get harder. But then there's also all the different components. It's not just phonics. It's, you know, then as they work themselves up, you know, they go from phonemic awareness to phonics. And I mean, those are all, you know, words that we use as teachers, but then they also have to have the understanding of vocabulary. It's just the whole picture of how they teach, of how we learned the progress, the process, the steps in order to teach reading, and in order to make sure that our kids can decode and they can end up being not only, you know, we've said it before about learning to read, but reading to learn when they get in 3rd grade. But Greg can dig into that deeper because he's been through.
Yeah, I think we're in year 4, or gonna be starting year 4 or starting year 5 of the North Dakota legislature mandating that our teachers and our materials are aligned to what they call the Science of Reading. Basically, what that means is you have to teach phonics to kids. There was, I mean, you know, going back 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was this thing called the Reading Wars, where there was this whole language thing and cueing, and there's a lot of things that were teachers were not being taught how to teach students. And a lot of it had to do with textbook companies and money and things like that. So that's all in the past. Now we know all that research was done. And now we know how the brain learns to read. So, we are mandated by the state that our teachers have to be trained and we have to be using materials that are aligned. So that's where we're at now.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is can you explain the difference between that and Freckle for the high school? Because it said you're using Freckle now, right?
Yeah, so the science of reading is how we teach reading. Freckle is a tool that we use to help us teach reading. So Freckle is a part of our Renaissance suite. It can be used in many different ways, but one of the ways is the students can be assigned lessons or tasks to complete. And it can be brought to whatever level they're at. So if we have a sixth grader that's reading at a fourth grade level, they can be assigned that level, you know what I mean? So it's very individualized and personalized. And so it's the tool that we use to help us teach reading.
And we use Freckle in the elementary too.
We do.
Just one thing of that, we do have teachers on staff here that learn to teach reading way different than what you're doing now. And Kelly Gephardt's one of them, right? So Kelly's not as old as I am, but I mean, she came through teacher prep program when they weren't teaching science of reading, but she's been through the whole letters course, which is the course that we send them to, extremely intensive, time consuming. And then they have had to rework or be reminded about how to teach reading once again. You know, they knew all the different components, but now it really emphasizes some of those things that we've not emphasized before, or that we maybe just have forgotten about. So Kelly,
Yeah, so again, we're mandated by the state. Our teachers have to be science reading trained, but there's levels. And then there's programs. So, the REAs, the Regional Education Associations, we belong to SEEC, SEEC, Southeast Education Cooperative. They put on a great program called Letters. And, we have 3 fully, so it's a 2-year program. It's very intensive. I mean, they go through a lot of stuff. They have weekly lessons. They have touch points where we have to get them sub and they gotta go to Fargo or Jamestown. But anyway, we have 3 fully trained letters teachers and we have 3 starting the program this year. So they'll be in year 1, but we have 3 fully trained. So we couldn't be in a better position, honestly, with where we're at, teaching kids how to learn to read.
We've set the money aside for that so that those teachers, because we've seen the value in it and the teachers really believe that it is. And it helps our teachers too to assess. I mean, we would have to buy some kind of an assessment tool. Our teachers really do have the skills to be able to run pretty informal assessments, or they could even do formal assessments in order to find out where our kids are, what skills they need, where to do interventions at, where their gaps are, where their strengths are. Our teachers are very well versed in that. Or elementary.
Is Freckle a tool that's used throughout the state? A lot of schools use it.
I think a lot do, yeah. I couldn't give you any number. So a long time ago, the last time we probably got formal training from Renaissance. Renaissance, their big claim was it was the largest used company for global assessments. And then Freckle was its own company. And then Renaissance bought Freckle. So, I mean, Renaissance has swallowed up a lot of smaller companies and stuff like that, you know, how everything works that way. But so I would say a large percentage of schools in our area do use Renaissance products, so.
There's Freckle Reading and Freckle Math. We purchased both of those and they've come a long ways because we weren't using them in the high school because they were pretty elementary and the junior high school kids didn't want to do something that elementary, but I think they saw that hole in their marketing and then they went out and they've improved that product. And when we went to conference this fall, it was like, I think we need to buy this as an intervention for our kids that hopefully we won't have those holes because we're doing this, you know, all the way up now.
And even with the NDSA Plus, like they've created a system that's basically a mirror image of Freckle. Same thing, you can assign like certain standards or skills that the kids need to do. And well, if we're doing this NDSA Plus, like the assessments, then it can be directly tied to see, all right, hey, what are they missing here? Now they can practice this. So that was pretty neat. We just saw that one this past spring, so.
Thank you. Okay, board members, you should have in front of you this sheet. This was quite a good sheet, and I'm just gonna encourage you to refer to it and think as, if you have more questions now, please ask them and try to frame them in the way that they're presented here. Otherwise, there are no more questions on this star. Where are we at? Full progress, Reg. Oh, we did all
Yeah, we
three
did
of
that.
these, K 2, 3, 6. I guess I'd like to know more. I guess this is a past, why? It's a why past focus question. Why were we not, you mentioned in your presentation that that we had Renaissance, we've had Renaissance for a long time and they have a large suite of products, but we weren't fully using it. Why were we not fully using the program that we think?
You know, I think as Greg and myself and Jordan, I mean, we knew the data, we know the program, we looked at it, but I think we have forgotten that the teachers need to have that training. And as we've gotten new products, we haven't done training for them. And we were trying to remember how many years ago it was the last time that we did some kind of a Renaissance training. It's been a while. Did you ever go? So before, so, you know, and part of it's money, part of it's time, part of it's just having so many other things. But now that we have our goals and our progress measures, now we're focused on that. We got to go back to it.
I think it's easy for me to train Jordan, you know, when we're teaching right next to each other. And then we can save some money. We don't need all of this, right? But that's another year and then, and it just kind of cycles through it. Pretty soon it's been however many years where we've never gotten any formal training. And it's like, hey, we really need to do this now. You know, part of it too is Renaissance is pushing us that way too. For the first time this year, they really reached out to us and wanted to, show us data and show us changes that they've made. So that makes a difference too, when the company is putting out, hey, we've made changes, you guys need to get up to speed too.
So is it fair to say then that even teachers who 10 or 15 or more years ago were trained and have been using the program, maybe to be retrained in the new capabilities?
Yes. So everybody will be trained on.
It's not that we weren't using it, I just think we aren't using it to the capability of what is actually offered now, because they've made so many upgrades and purchased different products and things like that. And so it's just a matter of what is our capacity? We have this narrow capacity of what we've been using it for years and years and years, and that has worked, but there's way more out there now, so.
Anything else, board members? Right.
Do you want us to go into our deeper dive?
Yeah, please do.
We might have some more past focused or future focused questions to ask if you go into your deeper dive.
Okay, so this should be similar to something you guys are used to seeing, right? And it shows the way our learners went from the first testing benchmark in the very fall, which would be the orange one, to the second testing benchmark, third, and then to the fourth. And then on the bottom there, you can see the urgent intervention, the intervention on watch, and then the kids that are at or above the 50th percentile. So in our kindergarten, you know, we ended up with just 1 or 2 learners there in the urgent, a couple in intervention, a few on watch, and then at or above, we moved a couple above in our last benchmark there. So first grade, lots of great data there too. Almost all of our learners are at or above in reading. Second grade, I'd like to look at this one. Look at that urgent intervention in our first testing window there. We had 15 urgent intervention readers in second grade. And then by the end of the year, you know, we're down to 5. So, I mean, we changed the future for some of those kids. 10 different kids, you know, were struggling readers. Not even struggling. I mean, they were not even probably emergent readers at that time. And now they're doing much better. So I really really commend our second grade teachers for the work they did this year. Third grade, really good data again. Fourth grade, very few urgent and intervention kids, couple on watch, and again, the vast majority of our kids are at or above the 50th percentile. In the fifth grade, we did not top out in our last testing there. In our first winter testing was actually our highest. Then we dropped down a little bit, but then we came back up a little bit there in our fifth grade, and then our sixth grade, our data was kind of all over the place. But after a dip, we did come back up a little bit in the at or above. We stayed pretty consistent at the urgent intervention there, and then made some changes in the intervention and on watch. Any questions on K6? Yeah, I'm gonna get Mr. Lynch's scores up here.
Madam President, do you mind if I chime in and model a question?
I don't mind at all, Sue.
So on those graphs that were just presented, I think that's a good opportunity to ask, which students are struggling still? Which students are just sort of, staying in the middle, and which students are showing the most growth? Are you noticing anything in common in those different buckets of kids? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense too. So I would say we put a large emphasis on our urgent intervention and our intervention kids. And so when we see, I just changed it over. So like looking at Jordan's, like you can kind of see, so, any kids on the far left in the urgent or in the intervention spots, that's where we put a large percentage of our resources, I guess you could say. We spend a lot of time with those kids. Those are the kids that are going into the Freckle in the high school. Those are the kids that are getting pulled out to do some extra things with Mrs. Steiner, our title teacher, or with our reading specialist, who last year was Kayla Treebold. And so, when we see those numbers drop, I think we see the fruits of our labors there. So in most of those, K6 examples, those urgent interventions dropped drastically, where some of those kids then move into the intervention. So those bars might go up, and then some of those kids actually move from intervention to on watch. So you see some of those come up. You may not see the at or above move, but you might see kids move from intervention to on watch. Does that make sense? Soon as that.
It totally makes sense. But unless I'm misinterpreting your graph, like you had more, your urgent kids in this particular slide in 7th grade, you had maybe 4, you had fewer than 5 fall, winter, late winter, but then spring it increased.
Yes.
What might have caused that increase?
And with that, it could be, let's say a new student moves in. You could have other factors of, let's say the kid didn't test during that fall benchmarking session for whatever reason it was during that window of time, because during this time too, it was just kind of established that we're going to be using this STAR data and say, okay, we're going to do this. Then we have 3 times a year now. Well, turns out we're doing it 4 times a year. Like that's just something the high school now we're actually going to use this resource. This is something that we're going to use and monitor. So, I mean, taking this data here, yes, we've had an increase in the urgent there, as well as intervention, but seeing throughout, like our on watch kids kind of fluctuated there, and as well as our at or above kind of was close to that steady mark where it kind of, that third, we'll say that mock third one, was kind of in that same area for seventh grade.
But I think what I'm hearing is that you're drilling down to the student to understand what the root cause was to then adjust your strategies. Am I hearing
Yes,
correctly? in
yes,
what-
that's where we can see like, all right, hey, we have some of these kids that are really close, they're missing these. They have these gaps, all right, hey, we tried Freckle, hey, this is what you need to do to get kind of over that hump to get to that at or above section, or hey, you're on watch here, how can we get you above? To where you need to be, so like that was something that we could do there, or even just like having the teachers see like, I know that you can do this, I've seen you do it before, and they're recognizing those deficiencies with that student here, but also like, I mean, you're gonna have those kids that I'm just not gonna do it just because I don't want to, or it's just hard, because I mean, that's for some of our kids, like, that's just what it is.
But yeah, Sue, I definitely agree with you. We do drill down. We know each and every one of those kids. We have spreadsheets. We move kids, like we have meetings where those kids are, I mean, those kids are named. All of our teachers know those kids and specific paths for them are available.
And that's what, so like in the high school, then we'll be able to have like a developmental English section that'll kind of like these urgent intervention kids, like, hey, this is gonna be something for you that we can help you out to get you beat back on pace, whether it's them missing it from the freshman year or just like coming from junior high. Hey, this is something that's really hard for them. Okay, what can we offer you here? Kind of a little bit, you can scroll down to the circle graphs there, right? So looking at this, then like the NDSA and the stars, so like looking at with the seventh grade there, all right, 47% were proficient or advanced, and with the NDSA, it didn't really kind of align with our scores, our urgent intervention, our intervention on watch, and then at or above, where they had, I can't remember what it was, but they had four different categories for the NDSA, which didn't kind of align with each one. So I was like, how can I get this to kind of match up here as like proficient or advanced or just not? And so with our seventh grade with the NDSA, like they were 66% were proficient or advanced, but then with their star, they were only at 47% with that. And I mean, we could think of all the reasons why that would be the case, whether it was they slept in or they woke up too early, or they just don't like the star, or the NDSA is something. I know for me, I remember when I was in high school, I was like, hey, I need to get up and eat a good breakfast because I know this is a big test. Where with star, when I take like similar like NEWEA test, is like, well, this is something I just need to take. So the different mindsets there, but then also like going down to then eighth grade, then Greg kind of is similar as, again, like you have 57% for the eighth grade were in the NDSA, where only 41% were proficient or advanced. I looked at two, so a lot of it in years past, we emphasized that 40% or more, where with this year, we changed it to be the 50%. One thing with that, I mean, when I looked at and changed it or thought of it as the 40% or above, like that percentage almost matched it a lot more. So I mean, we're holding a higher standard to our kids, which I think is great. And so like this doesn't really reflect kind of what it actually is there, because we're pushing them to be better, to be that proficient or advanced, which most of our, I mean, 57% of our kids are there.
So you said you focus on most of the time and resources on the urgent and the intervention. What are you doing for those kids that are like the high flyers in the class?
So we have kind of, when we broke up kind of like our homes and stuff, we kind of focus on like, hey, you have kind of these ones that are either just missing, let's say, just their math or just the reading. Okay, this is what you're going to focus on to get here. Some of those other ones that were like struggling, it's like, hey, you have this, but also like you're struggling with just like your work period. Like we need to make sure you're getting your work completed. You can meet with the teacher, you can focus on this here. So we had different spots that the kids could be. So like, hey, if I was only 2 points short on my star, all right, hey, you're gonna go work with Mrs. Bolt because she's the ELA teacher here. So to hopefully get that or do the freckle practice skills or whatever it's gonna be to kind of get them over that hump there.
We definitely need to make improvements in both the high school and the elementary, but more so in high school, ensuring that we are providing for those kids on the upper end of it, because that, and as we move into our standards-based reporting and we start to get further down the PCBL, providing those fours will give us that, for providing the acceleration through some of those classes or pre-testing, you know, there, we have to do a better job of that because the Greg and Jordan both said, we do a lot for the urgent and intervention because those are easy. Those are, and I don't mean easy by the fact of getting those kids, but in order to find programs, there's lots of programs for kids that are in urgent and in intervention area. That top end is what we need to do with our personalization. We need to provide fours. We need to provide other options for kids for classes, and we need to do a better job of that. And I think that those are goals for us as a school as we start to move further down. This is, we have to start providing at that top end.
Do you have a strategy how to do that?
Okay, my strategy would be as we look at our proficiency scales, that our proficiency scales are really well done and that we have fours at the top of those proficiency scales. So every standard should have a proficiency scale, and that for me is a goal as we move forward. And there's a lot of tools, like we just went to the Personalized Learning Institute up at Northern Cass, and that was one of the big things that they talked about was making sure that our proficiency scales have got something at every level. And there's a lot of resources for writing those proficiency scales. AI, there's all sorts of different programs out there that we can become masters at providing that acceleration. But my goal would be that we go through all of our proficiency scales and that they're all aligned with their standards, and every one of them has a 4 or something that those kids can do in order to give them that push, in order to go beyond and above.
And then I just think of like when we went into it at Bismarck, I mean, you're giving these kids other options outside of just like the regular confines of the classroom there. Okay, how can you apply this outside in the real world? What can we do here? So just find ways to kind of tie it in there, because that's just gonna help our kids realize, okay, how can I take what I'm learning here and take it out of the classroom? This is relevant to me somehow. And I mean, a lot of those kids that are those high flyers, okay, now take this, you need to apply it at like level 4s like Mrs. Sell said.
Do we have an advanced placement English or math class that's available for some of these kids? I know when I was in school, that was an option in senior and senior year.
So with our junior high, they're able to take a test at the end of their 7th grade year to kind of get them into that algebra compared to doing regular 8th grade. And then we have some advanced courses. Miss Sheeler does like the advanced math. We have, I mean, for science, we offer like anatomy and physiology. This is gonna be the first year we're gonna try to do it with the dual credit with Mrs. Knoble here on staff. So we have someone there that's capable of doing that. So trying to find ways to, yes, we want to achieve those high flyer students as well, to push them further. Without just kind of, hey, you're just gonna be back at this that we've done it. We have an advanced bio, we've had some other courses that have.
College English, college algebra, but those are about the extent of it. We do need to do we need to do a better job of it. We haven't,
Most of those then
They've done
are
that.
junior, senior year where kind of freshman, sophomore kind of gets missed with that.
I mean, we've got a child that programs and wrote a program for keyboarding. Does that kid really need to go through algebra? You know, I mean, we've got to start looking at each individual child instead of keeping us, and that's the direction that we need to go.
Would you say the majority of the focus is with the urgent kids in the classroom?
I would say a lot of the focus is we want to get all those kids to be at that 50% mark. So whoever it is, however it's, how can we get you all to be at this 50? Well, once you hit that, then it turns into congratulations, you did it. Now we need to do this here, where then we still think about those kids that are above that mark. But then we think, okay, now we need to go down to the student that is at that 25, that 30, 40, 48. How can we get them to be that 50 mark? So yeah, I'd say like once you think about that, like that 50 mark, say, all right, hey, you got there, congratulations. Now let's go down to our students here. Which I mean is just when you're given that mark, that's your focus then. Hey, we want to get you that 50. Once you get that 50, great job. Now what?
With the junior high, if they're eligible, do you automatically give them a test like to get into algebra, or is it just
So-
if the student wants to, they have an option?
No, they need to meet so many like certain scores on whether it's their STAR, their NDSA. Then you also have educator input along with that as well.
In our traditional way of doing, we just have to get further down the standards-based reporting role, because that separates them out, right? And you can have a child that's in a classroom And if they know the standard, but in traditional, what did we do? I might have known how to solve quadratic equations, but because I was in that class, I had to sit through that, right? But as we start to move forward and we start to look at every standard, well, we will be able, and we will make sure that those kids have what they need from the beginning of it, because there's no reason that kids that know how to do that stuff should have to sit through a class just to get a credit that we're holding on to, because we want that power. We've got to get where we are doing things for every child and we're meeting them where they're at. Are we gonna get there next year? No. I mean, this is a long-term goal for us, but I mean, next year, every teacher is going to be standards-based reporting. And that's gonna be a big leap for us in the high school, but every high school teacher, you're gonna see your report cards, they're gonna be based on standards. No longer gonna be traditional average grades. It's gonna be each standard. You should be able to call your kids as teachers and say, what did my child get on this? Or why did they get a 1 on this? Why did they get a 3? And those teachers should be able to explain to you why that happened.
Thank you. Any more questions? So if not, we do have one more presentation with this, on the student outcome goals and guardrails, and this is our special ed director.
Yeah, I think yeah. Do you want to accept the,
Is this part of the goal progress monitoring?
yeah, let's do that.
I'd like, if you don't mind to indulge me, I'd like to make a comment about your progress monitoring today. I got a little teary-eyed. You guys are the model of doing this work. To see, and I want to mark this moment in your progress, in your focus on your students' outcomes. You started this about a year ago, and you are already demonstrating results as evidenced by this report. And when I first got this from Anna, when I saw exceeded target as a coach, my gut tells me that means the target is too low. But then I started to read the superintendent's response and was reminded, like she's reminded you all, that she had shared a few months back at the middle of the year that you usually decline at the end of the year by this measure. And there were intentional efforts by the superintendent and her team to get different results, but to not just stop there, but to say, and here's what we're going to do next. And this is a model for any school system in the country to look to see what is possible for children and what is possible in a short period of time. And you guys should give yourselves a huge pat on the back for the amount of effort that you have put into changing course for your kids.
Thank you.
On behalf of your kids, thank you.
Okay,
Right,
so maybe I'll just introduce Andrea. Andrea is our outgoing special ed director, and I wanted her to come and do a presentation for you because, we were talking about the kids that are in our urgent intervention, but the programming that the special ed unit provides for us and the services are huge for us in order to meet our reading goals. For all of our kids, whether and it isn't just our kids that are in urgent and intervention, but there are some kids that are on IEPs that are sitting in the at or above, but the services that Andrea and our unit provide for are very instrumental in how our kids do and how our kids perform. So that's why we wanted her to present it. So.
And
Okay.
my presentation actually is just a broader level overview of what the unit does, the staffing that we provide, the number of students by disability category, and then some of the financials that tie in. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Greg, are you going to click through that?
I will click through it. You just tell me when.
Okay, go ahead. So I wanted to talk a little bit about preschool trends, and then having not been here for some of those earlier years, I reached out to Denise Allender, our speech path, and just asked her, you know, what were our preschool numbers? So if you look at the numbers from 2021 to where we're projected to be at the fall of 24 to 25, some of these kids are little tykes with more significant needs that will be coming up into kindergarten in the upcoming years. So in 2021, we had 5, 21, 22, there were 3 students in the preschool setting. I didn't have the numbers as to how many were in the AM session versus the PM session, since we have the 3-year-olds in the morning come in and 4 to 5-year-olds in the afternoon. In 22 to 23, there were 4 students total. And then if you look at 2023 to 2024, we had 3 students in the morning session and 4 students in the afternoon session, which actually we had a total of 8, which Denise had corrected me to. And this would be COVID age children who are turning 3 this school year. We had 1 student start partway through the year, which is why it became 8. So returning in the fall of 2024 to 2025, there will be 5 students starting at the beginning of the year in preschool. 1 student is moving out and 2 are coming up to kindergarten. You want to click? So currently we have 48 students receiving special education and or related services. So that's to include special education, speech, language pathology services, PT, physical therapy, OT, occupational therapy, and some vision interventions and strategies too from our vision impaired specialist. So by category, we have 14 students, K-12 currently diagnosed with a specific learning disability. That's 29.2% of the population of students who are on IEPs, or 2.9% of your total student population. There are 12 students with NCD, which is non-categorical delay. So these are students aged 10 or under who qualify and are eligible to receive specially designed instruction and or related services through our special education staff. But they don't quite fall under any specific eligibility or criteria categories, such as specific learning disability, autism, other health impaired, intellectual disability. So that's 25% of the population of students on IEPs, or 2.5% of the total population there at Oaks. You have 8 students who have been diagnosed with autism. That's 14.7% of your special ed population, or 1.7% of your total student body population. 7 students with an other health impairment. This could consist of, just depending upon diagnoses medically based, that demonstrated a need for eligibility criteria for the specially designed instruction and services. Diagnoses such as attention deficit disorder would fall underneath that category, just as an example. That's 14.6% of the population of students receiving special ed, and 1.5% of your total student body population. And then because the numbers were so small in some of these other categories, I put them all together because we don't want that to be personally identifiable for individual students in your district. So there's 7 students who are diagnosed as either having an intellectual disability, which is ID, a hearing impairment, which is HI, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, VI, that's vision impairment, or SL, which is just students specifically on a speech language IEP. That's 14.6% of the special ed population and 1.5% of your total student body population. Do you want to go ahead and click? So currently, in discussing behavioral needs, we have some students who have some significant behavior. So currently 8 students have behavior intervention plans and are receiving skills-based instruction from a combination of our school social worker, our special ed teacher, and or our school psychologist. So they've had a functional behavior assessment done, and then the behavior intervention plans are specifically aligned with the function of their individual behaviors that they exhibit. The unit total, so that's all of our unit school districts, which is Oaks, Hope Page, Maple Valley, Barnes County North, and Valley City. There are 34 students on IEPs with behavior intervention plans. Currently, our school psychologist is assisting with 4 students through MTSS at Oaks as well. And then just so that you have an idea of the amount of time that goes into those students who have behavioral needs, a functional behavior analysis and a behavior intervention plan prep takes approximately 3 to 10 hours per student per month. And then a behavior intervention plan, fidelity check and coaching. So that's coaching the special ed staff, whether it be the paras or the teachers. And then making sure that we're collecting data with consistency and fidelity, and actually adjusting our interventions and strategies as needed. Could be anywhere from 5 to 20 hours weekly for those students. And then behavior data collection or interpretation is roughly 1 hour a week. So for Oaks total, there have been 5 initial referrals. And this was roughly a month and a half ago when I created the presentation as a draft. So there were 5 initial referrals down at Oaks. 2 referrals were still in the process of being completed at that time. 2 were not eligible, and 1 moved prior to the process being completed. So I don't feel like there was a high level of referrals down at Oaks. So I'm pretty confident that we are not over referring, and then additionally not over identifying students who demonstrate academic skill deficits for special education eligibility. And that's where it's really important to pay attention to the MTSS process and what you guys are doing down in Oaks, because if we're doing things right, students are demonstrating growth, and it's preventing them from being referred to special education for evaluation. And then we're preventing over identification for those students who have some skill gaps that we are working to close as a school.
So
So-
I'd like to sorry, Andrea, I'd just like to interject right there. So that this is an area where those kids that meet that, you know, they take the test and they're urgent, they're the red kids
They're
that show up
2 or 3.
after they
Yep.
take that test. And it's like, okay, what could be the problem? Well, we run through a bunch of different scenarios, right? We do interventions, we do things. Referring them to special ed is one of the options, right? And so what Andrea is saying is, we're not just taking the easy route and saying, oh, they must have a learning disability, let's refer them. Like, we run through a gamut of different things before we get to that point of saying, okay, now we need to see if they truly do have a learning disability. And so then they go through that referral process at that point in time. So I think, Andrea, you hit the nail on the head. And it kind of speaks right back to what Jordan and I were talking about. All of that energy that we're spending on those kids are, you know, it's working. Our kids are moving past that, and we're not identifying kids that struggle as learning disabilities.
Yeah, to add to that, you know, I have conversations with Mary McCarville O'Connor at the state level. She is our state director of special education. And we've discussed how MTSS is supposed to be the stopgap in preventing over-identification and over-referral of students to eligibility processes for special education, because special education is not the least restrictive environment for students. The least restrictive environment for students is being in class with their regular education peers as much as possible, and being exposed to that core content so that they're not falling further and further behind from their peers. What research shows is that the more time they're pulled out of class away from peers, the harder it is to catch them back up to the same level as their peers in terms of meeting the mastery learning criteria for the state standards and benchmark that it's being taught in the course. And then over-identifying and over-referring students because they have had access or a lack of access to certain things, whether it be because they're from a family who has lower income, right, is actually a discriminatory practice if we are over referring and over identifying them. So really, to me, your data is showing that you have some pretty strong practices in place right now. And then we'll get to North Dakota Insights dashboard. At some point, Greg, I'll ask you to let me host just so I can show why I can't present the North Dakota State Achievement Testing results with the board. But so facts from the state level, only 76% of students with disabilities graduate. That's the current statistic. And 1 in 4 students who qualify to receive special ed services actually drop out prior to being able to graduate. So our current staffing down in Oaks, in the early childhood preschool, we have 1 special education teacher and 1 paraeducator. At the elementary, we have 1 special education teacher, 4 paraeducators, and that was 2 open positions at the time that I drafted the PowerPoint. Right now, we actually have more than that, 4 para positions open. So what we did as the Cheyenne Valley Special Education Unit Board is we decided to create a position to add on another elementary teacher who could also provide a certain level of services if necessary at the high school to some of our students. So one teacher essentially to provide services who can write the IEPs, progress monitor, and track the data according to the students' aligned goals and objectives is actually the equivalent in terms of services to roughly 2 to 3 para staff. However, knowing that you have some students with some higher behavioral and significant needs due to their disabilities or dual disabilities, some of our students have more than one disability category that they've qualified under, just have a higher outlier population that needs a higher level of paraeducator staff right now. At the high school, there's 1 special education teacher, and then there were 2 full-time paraeducators and 1 was 3/4 time. You have 1 full-time speech language pathologist at Oaks, and then our itinerant staff who travel down there is a school psychologist, 1 school social worker, 1 occupational therapist, 1 certified occupational therapist for this year. And then there was a part-time physical therapist we contracted with from outside in the community, and then 1 vision impaired special education teacher. So the positives that we've seen this year, our parents down there are actually actively involved in participating at their students' meetings, and they do speak up when they have concerns about their kids, as any parent should and could. And that's something we understand as a parent ourselves is we want what's best for our kids. Special education staff are receptive to feedback and they're welcoming of professional development opportunities. So each of our teachers, both Lizelle Luzeran and Nikki Bautista, because they're new to the states and just learning our state federal requirements and guidelines, they both took a crash course for special education on the North Dakota side of things. And then they also each participated in a course with the North Dakota Educational Hub to try and get up to speed very quickly when they arrived into the States. So they are very dedicated to learning, being studious, and doing what's best for the students there. Cheyenne Valley Special Education Unit recently opened that additional special education teacher position, and that position has been filled. And then special education staff are also truly committed to their students and student learning. They're passionate about student growth, the progress and learning overall for the kids. How we're funded. The unit's primarily funded through federal grant funding with the IDEA-B pre-K discretionary grant if and when it's available. That's only $10,000. That allows us to provide for recruitment and retention of highly trained staff. And then also a behavioral health grant. So I write those grants, apply for them, and then we get the funding. SVSEU receives the direct ADM amount for students. So that's the per pupil payment amount. Each school contributes excess costs according to their student enrollment. That's the projected enrollment at the beginning of each year, and that is sent to us by Adam Tesher at the state. So the excess costs are set up for expenditures that go above and beyond the ADM, and that consists of the therapists and extra staff such as our physical therapists, OTs, school psychologists, and out-of-district placements. One student placed out of district can potentially cost us upwards of $140,000 a year, not counting transportation. So this provides for those costs above and beyond the federal grant dollars, the excess costs due, and the ADM payments. Roughly 80% of our unit operating expenditures are staff. Student contracts reach a minimum threshold. So some of our high cost students, once they've hit a minimum threshold of roughly $56,000, we write a student contract and send it to the state for approval, and they reimburse us above and beyond that minimum threshold amount. So we get that back from the state. So currently our ADM payments for our member districts are for 23 to 24 here on the board. And that's based off of the percentage of the projected enrollment at the beginning of the school year. And that's not set and finalized until, if I remember the date correctly, September 15th. And then I also put it into excess cost 5-year history. So we actually slightly decreased the excess costs that that each of our districts pays back for those costs above and beyond what we receive through federal funding. So you can look at the student population, and then you can look at the total population down on the bottom of the screen and what the excess costs were above and beyond the federal grant dollars that we wrote the grants for and received funds for. So again, 80% of our operating expenses are staff wages and salary to be able to meet the needs of our kids. That was a lot in a short amount of time. Greg, can you assign me as host just briefly? And I want to go to the ND Insights dashboard.
Yep, 1 second.
So one other thing I wanted to point out is the state of North Dakota does publish each individual school district's achievement data for ELA, math, and science. And so we'll look at what they have published up there, and the year that they have is 22-23. They haven't updated anything more recently. Takes time to get all of that data out there. So just looking at Oaks Public Schools in general, not counting our special ed population, for the district, your ELA achievement scores are actually higher for proficiency and advanced than the state average. Same thing for math. Same thing for science. When we click over to the special education side, there is no data. And the reason why is because you have such a small population of students by those grades that participate in the state assessments that and they'll say it on the site here too, for 1 or more years, the rate was based on 1 to 9 students. So for FERPA reasons and not wanting to make those students identifiable, because that would be a breach of confidentiality, they can't publish any of the data for the math assessment, reading assessment, and science for students who are on IEPs for Oaks. They do have a gap rate for 2021 and 21-22, but they can't legally publish the data for our students receiving special education services. So I just wanted to show that to you, but all of this information is out there for the public to see on the North Dakota Insights dashboard. So any questions? One thing that we've done this year is I had introduced the concept of Spire reading, which aligns with the letters training. Carrie Whipple actually has recommended that to a previous school district that I worked with, and we saw a lot of growth with students both on and off IEPs. And so I purchased levels 1 through 3. Just one kit, not counting the student workbooks, levels 1 through 3 runs roughly $1,200. So I did purchase that to use with students down in Oaks. And then our teachers, we had Melissa Kukowski trained, and then the new teacher coming in, Rebecca Compson, has used Spire before. It's a pretty comprehensive phonological and phonemic awareness program that also consists of decoding and encoding skills, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, and writing, and it's based on the concepts of Orton Gillingham. So it's a pretty good program, tends to help students demonstrate growth in those areas where they're lacking the phonemic and phonological awareness, while building upon the other skills too as they move up the levels of Spire reading. So that has been purchased and it's been started to use. They've started to use that with a couple of students down in Oaks there who are receiving special ed services. And my high school student just requisitioned the next levels 4 through 6. And that's roughly $1,400 for those kits.
Again, looking at that data, and then there's another intervention, and I mean, we could use Spire if we wanted to use Spire. It's you know,
Pretty
even though we
expensive.
unify, we share it. Yeah, we share our resources.
So, Andrea, you pointed out that the state cannot publish the data
Mhm.
regarding those because of the small number of students, but it's fair to say that our staff know the data.
Yes,
for
because
each student.
within each of their IEPs, they have to progress monitor, and that progress has to be reported out in the IEP itself at least twice a year. So similar to what you guys do for parent-teacher conferences, our staff also have to report out student progress at minimum twice per year in written format and once per year verbally at the annual IEP meeting.
So how would this board know if we are falling short in serving in the progress that's expected of our special education students?
Well, the school itself has the district benchmarking data. And Greg tracks that. Jordan can pull it up and look at it too for STAR.
So our staff knows, but
Yep.
they have to.
And then I, as a director, I do compliance monitoring to ensure that all of our staff are actually writing the progress reports and then writing them with fidelity, consistency, and ensuring that that data is reported out in those IEPs. And if it's not, then conversations are held with our staff.
Okay, so, but is it reported somewhere like in the consolidated application or something that?
It could be, but, okay, so in my, superintendent report this month, there was our report card from the state for special ed, so that would be what we'd get from the state, so.
Having met those compliance indicators, the state also monitors at their own level as well. Yep, they can pull up and track all of our data. And then when they have questions about things that look like they are not being done, they call me, and then I call the teachers too and have conversations with them above and beyond my informal monitoring in coordination with the evaluations that we do with your building level principals.
So, but somehow the board should officially be notified somehow if we're not up to speed on our special ed or anything, but we're
it
gonna be
looks-
notified by the state that we're falling short in some area, right?
Right, yeah, because our report card would tell us.
You get your report card. Yep, and then the state sends those report cards as well to the special ed, to the special ed unit.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you so much. Is there a motion to accept the goal progress monitoring report as presented at today's meeting? Heimbach moves. Is there a second? Second. Day seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion passes. Let's move on to B, Superintendent Guardrail Progress Monitoring, number 1, communication.
Yeah, so, no, this is engagement, right?
Oh. And, oh, it says
Yeah.
communication.
Did I
here
put that
on
in there?
my-
Oops. It does, yeah.
Oh, engagement.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Number 1 engagement. So I do was the ask for 1.1, 1.3, so that was just that, which I noted that in Wisconsin and what's next. So the baseline for 1.1, which is using the Wellington data, and that's for the kids in the percentage of learners that indicate love or challenged in their math class, which on the Wellington, it's marked as engaged, but we just use words love and challenge was 56% of them. In ELA, it's 45%. That'll be our baseline. And then the OPS engagement survey, which Tanya asked the question, is this the state? No, this is not the state. This is just the one. And this is that needs to be changed. Very good job responses from this. I got better response rate in December, but part of it was the way that the survey was sent out. I made a mistake on it, so I didn't hit as many kids as I wanted to. So only 96 students took the OPS engagement survey, which was Guardrail 1.3. And of those 96 students, 57% of the students said that they were engaged or very engaged. And there was a high number of 4, 5, and 6 students that took it. So it will be interesting when I do this again in December, when I change my behavior and I make sure that I've got high school kids to do it to see where those numbers go. So yeah, I mean, we'll have more kids, right? But we'll see where that. And I tried really hard on this survey, and it isn't, reliability or anything like that. But I asked them questions, like, do you like this class? Or do you like school and not? I just did it as school as an overall, and what's your reasons? And I asked them for feedback, and I looked through all of that feedback to see, why do they like it? Why do they not like it? And they've got some really good feedback for us, and so then I, share with these guys and haven't given it to them yet, but. I messed up on this, that was my fault, but anyway, so, we have the baseline for these, and then we'll move on to those in December, and I will make sure that this gets out to more kids. And hopefully they'll do it. It's just like any other survey, you know?
Do it.
I don't know. In the elementary, the teachers do it right in their class in 4, 5, and 6, so that, of course, raises the participation, right? Because they're there. We haven't done that in the high school because
Part of
this,
that is, we want to make sure the kids understand, like, how to get into it, right? They're not as proficient with the, getting into their emails, making sure they're, so part of that is, we do that in 4, 5, 6 because they're age, but maybe we need to do it a little bit more in high school.
and then you go the other way, I look at both sides of it, because like, I don't really want the teachers to influence it either, right? I want them to be honest about it, instead of sitting in front of me saying, you do that, I want to see what they really truly feel about it, so it was kind of like, I didn't want to I'm just about this, I got a problem solved to get more. Elementary, right, high school, they figure the game out, if I said, hey, your name would go into a drawing, well, then I wouldn't have to be able to make it anonymous, so I gotta think about how I'm gonna increase participation on that, but I really wanna hear what, because engagement, we see that, right? We saw it you saw that in my superintendent report, the engagement survey, our engagement starts out high and then it just, so we've got to figure that out, right? So we've got the data from the state, even though it's not one of our progress measures, we still see that they are highly engaged in 3, 4, 5, and then it starts to dwindle off as they get older and, to try to figure that out. Yeah, that's something we gotta do.
How long does the survey take?
This one that I sent them, maybe 5 minutes, maybe at the most. I don't even think it's 10. Like, engage, do it on a liker. Super easy, and if they don't want to comments, they don't have to, but gives them a platform. Boy, I just think school sucks, or I love school, or whatever, so,
So it was sent out by email.
yes.
Okay, my question was, how did you end up with only like 96? Well, that's where I was wondering how you ended up with that, but if it was sent out by email and optional, then that kind of
Yeah.
explains.
Yeah.
that.
And
That's what, it was sent out by email, and then the teacher's like, hey, check your email,
Mhm.
there's a survey in there to fill out. Well,
Okay.
just like any other
Yeah.
thing, some of them will hear it, some of them think, email.
So nothing that they had to do.
Yeah, is Mrs. Sell really gonna do something with it? So, maybe that's part of it. I've got to make sure that those kids know that I listened to what they said, or, or bring that forth to them somehow to let them know that I saw it, I'm paying attention to it, just so that they don't think it's just one more thing. But this year we were so heavy in assessments and surveys, that was probably part of it too. They're like, oh, not one more, right?
Is it like a survey monkey, or did you just like
It's on
directly?
forms.
Okay.
It was on forms, and I messed that piece of it too, because I had used the same form, and it was just a mess up by me, and then Maureen had to correct me. And then we resent it out again, and I'm sure they were thinking, what that kids do.
So what would be so wrong with having them take it right away in the class, in the beginning of the class?
Well, they could, I just didn't, I don't know how I feel about it. I wanted it to not be that the teachers are there pressuring them, and I don't want a kid to feel like, I gotta say like I like school because the teachers are in that room. I really kind of wanted it to just be guided by the kids, but it might end up being that we're just gonna say, hey, we're gonna set aside 5 minutes to do this survey, and not read through the questions or anything like that. So maybe that's a really good point. We're just gonna set time aside, go and do this survey for Mrs. Sells. Any other questions?
Oh, you answered most of it, so that was good, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to accept the superintendent guardrail progress monitoring report on engagement? So, Heimbach moves, second, Nagel seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion? Heimbach, Nagel, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Anyone opposed, say no? No, yeah, I said aye already. Motion passes. Sorry. I was thinking.
It's so late at night.
Edit that out, please. we are on to the board self-evaluation. You might remember that a long time ago, we all received forms that we were supposed to use to complete our evaluation of the first quarter, January, February, March. Then we didn't get to that, where we started it. We did not complete it at our last meeting. So what we're doing here is we're going to try to complete that assessment, our board self-evaluation. And when I visited with Sue earlier today, I said, well, that was so long ago, I can't remember what I put, and I don't have a copy of it. So, and she suggested that we actually consider just going through it together and evaluating, not just for January, February, March, but where we are now. And then we would be done. We wouldn't do it in July, or you all wouldn't do it in July. But I would be getting out of that for July, so we can do it. So if you have your binder handy,
I'm just pulling it up on our
You
little
could do
resources
that.
folder.
okay? So in your binder, there's a tab called framework. And if you flip to page 28. If we could all, and just bust right in, Sue, if I'm not on the right track here, but if we look at objective number 1, the last 1 quarter ago, we scored ourselves a 12, or that was actually for the 4th quarter of 2023. So we must have thought we were already all in the 4th column proficient. Am I right?
Yes, and you're doing a beautiful job of leading through this. And so if you want to just keep going and just use me as backup, that is
Okay.
totally fine with me.
Okay, so we don't even need to look at anything to the left of 12 because we are proficient, because we haven't gone backwards, have we?
So Sonia, you're actually raising a very important question. Even when a board gets to a certain level in an objective, it is always a good idea to look and make sure that you haven't fallen backwards on something. Because every once in a while, there's has done this in the last quarter or has done this in the last year. And so that is still a mindful approach to take, is making sure you're still where you think you are.
All right, so column 1 for 0 points. The board does not meet this objective if any of the following are true. The board does not have a vision. What would we say embodies our vision? Our commitments and our vision, our commitments and mission, right? So we have that. The board does not have goals. Well, we have our goals. And we don't consistently distinguish between outputs and outcomes, which we all learned a year ago.
Okay, still do it.
Excuse me, Sonia, let me make a suggestion just to help you guys save some time. So
Good.
all of you completed that online form that I had sent you a link to about 6 weeks ago. We were supposed to do this evaluation at your May meeting, but I had no electricity and I was doing your meeting from my car. And so it was postponed to this month. I can see what 5 different people completed, but it's not identified. And so I think something that can save some time in this exercise, and I love that you're taking ownership of this as board chair, because eventually it should be the board chair leading this conversation in future quarters. But a more time efficient way of going about it is, okay, you all have completed this. Maybe too much time has passed to remember exactly what you did. But, if somebody wants to start the discussion with where they think you are and why they think that's the where you are at, does not meet novice, partially proficient, or advanced. And then, is there anybody who believes that we're in a different place than that? And what is your reason for that? Because if the first person says, I think we're at proficient, here's why I think we're at proficient, and nobody disagrees with that, then you can move on. Well, except for the next step would be, where do we want to be at the end of the next quarter? But I think let's just start with talking them through who wants to chime in first and make their case for where we're at.
All right, so 1 quarter ago, we thought we were at a 12. Does anyone want to, say where you think we are now?
I think we're still there.
Why do you think that?
Well, because I don't think we've committed everything to memory. And I don't think that we can off the top of our head tell us the current status of each student outcome goal.
There is not broad community ownership.
That's the big one. That's the big one.
Okay, so do we want to agree that we are still at a 12 there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm writing that on my paper. Shall we now, at this point, I think we should also say where we want to be in the next quarter, which would actually, are we saying then that we're evaluating this for July? So we're actually in the Q2 of 2024?
It's either that or you're coming back and doing the same thing again in a month.
Let's no.
Okay, so above your current quarter, let's put Q2 of 2024. And so by the next quarter, which is gonna be the end of October, where do we wanna be?
I would love to say 15, but in order to have broad community ownership, it's going to take us longer than 1 quarter.
Agreed.
Okay, so if we have the first 2 bullet points under advanced mastered, is that 2 points or an additional 2 points? And where are we still just at 12? All prior conditions and the following, so we'll only still be at 12. Okay. All right. Moving on then to objective 2. Yep, running freeze. Okay, objective 2, we evaluated ourselves as proficient. Who would like to mention where they think we are today?
Really, we're still at a 12 because we do not, again, have broad community ownership.
Agreed? So we're at a 12 and Mr. Sire agrees as well. Where would you like to be next quarter? Do you think we'll be able to get broad community ownership? Oh, board community ownership. I think that should say broad.
Should be broad.
Okay. I think that's a pretty lofty goal for next time. So should we say we'll stay at 12? Guardrail 3, objective 3, the board has adopted guardrails. We had ourselves in the 4th quarter of 2023, we had ourselves at a 5, partially proficient. Anybody care to say where we are, where you think we are today?
So last time, I think on objective 3, you were at 5 partially proficient. Is that what you just said, Sonia?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my dogs are barking.
I would venture.
I would agree with that.
No, I said I don't.
Okay, we believe we're at a 13. We've made some strides. We've got the guardrails. We relied on student data and we agree that they will challenge the organization. And we agree that the superintendent guardrail progress measures will challenge the organization to uphold community values. They're predictive and they're influenceable by the superintendent. So I think we've agreed we're at a 13 there. And where would we like to be by the end of October?
We're still
I think
not
that's where you
community
stay there.
ownership.
We're not setting the bar too high, are we? Okay,
Baby steps on me.
objective 4, the board has adopted a monitoring calendar for student outcome goals and goal progress measures. We thought we were novice, only at a 2. So where have we gone since then? Oh boy, that's when we have to look at our.
You had that memorized?
Well, Sue and I talked about that. What happened is we were doing really, really well, and then we factored in committees. Yeah. So like the facilities meeting really hits.
Okay, so. Where is our time trackers, you know? Or somewhere.
That's got in reports.
Oh, there it is, 4, the May times 800. But do we have it? We don't have that through now, do we?
Was this 27% that's on reflected on the sheet?
So I'll pull that up really quick here. You may, so here's the one thing that'll get you a little wonky doing it now instead of next month, but it's fine. You're hovering just under 25%. You might be able to eke out getting over 25% for the quarter that you're currently in. I don't know that it winds up averaging out over both of those quarters to 25%, but you're kind of right there on the bubble.
But
I
so we can't really do this effect through July 31st because we don't have the time tracker. We don't have this
yeah.
month or next month.
Well, it would, this quarter would go through June 30th, so July won't matter. But
Oh,
let me
right,
just-
sorry, yeah.
Let me look at really quick your current time tracker.
So what's represented on the sheet we're looking at, the quarterly progress tracker that has a 27% at the bottom in student outcome minutes. That is what was actually measured and tracked in January, February, March, right? Must be.
So yeah, so quarter 1 of 2024, your total for all of your meetings, including your facilities committee meetings, you were at rounding up at 22%.
So that's not accurate.
For that quarter. For your current quarter, which wouldn't include this meeting, and I've been watching to see if you had any more committee meetings. And unless that's changed in the last week, you are at 18% for the current quarter that we're in. You're probably, even though you're doing really well today, you're probably not going to tip into that 25%. What really threw you off was your facilities committee meetings.
So where do we believe we are today?
Partially.
So we're partially proficient 6, we have improved. And the next quarter, where would we want to be?
Then somebody read out loud the last item under partially proficient.
Evaluates the superintendent in part on the results and progress toward the student outcome goals and superintendent guardrails using information within monitoring reports according to the monitoring calendar.
That won't be until November, that's right. All right,
So
fine,
then-
we're back to 2.
So then we're still only at a 2? And you won't make it to 6, you will only be at a 6.
Oh, knocked us down.
Can't overachieve on everything.
All right, next, the board has structured
I
operations.
didn't hear where you're trying to be at the end of October.
6, because we won't use that new tool until November.
Well, we could be up 16, but.
So,
This is
Check
the
it
end of
out.
October.
so
Or in
check-
September. We'll do it in October.
if
Oh,
you,
September, yeah, yeah.
if you adopt your new evaluation tool, I think you guys can decide how you want to interpret that at the end of the next quarter. If you want to interpret it as this is how you're going to be evaluating your superintendent because you've adopted this new tool and this new process, I think you can count that. Unless you want to be super, super strict on yourself and say, we're not going to count it until we've actually conducted a superintendent evaluation this way.
We're not cheaters here. We're doing it.
Okay. I don't know that I would say it's cheating, but I love I love the level of integrity that you want to apply to it. And I also want to lift up, because I think this is important, you can meet things in, for example, you're at a 2 right now, you can be meeting some of the things in partially proficient and even some of the things in proficient. And there are even situations where you might even meet some of the things in advanced, but still not have everything under partially proficient in order to have the points on the board. There is nothing wrong with still accomplishing the things that are in those other categories, even if you haven't completed all of the things in a preceding category. I wouldn't think of it as linear. It just means you don't get the full score.
So we believe we're at a 2, don't exceed a 2, but you want to set 6 or 16 for the next 6. If you exceed it, well,
Then we will.
Good,
Sounds like
good.
that.
all right.
We'll call you as soon as.
Yeah. Keep me posted. Objective 5, the board has structured operations for success. We really made it to a 1 last time. So what have we done since then? Anybody care to share your thoughts?
I don't very much.
I'm just doing good listening. I almost think that was efficient.
When it says and under proficient that we didn't exceed an average of 4 meetings per month, does that include committee meetings? Or
I would say yes. Since those count in time tracking,
so yes,
I would say yes.
I don't think.
I'm gonna double check, because I have a little bit of gray area on that. I'm gonna double check with Marcia on that, but my interpretation is yes.
Even at that,
Even
an
so.
average, I don't think it
Mhm.
would be.
No.
We had committee meetings, but it was curricular and wellness and stuff like that, and there weren't any.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking, my interpretation is using publicly posted meetings of the board. The ones that are on your website. Are the ones that you just stated, are those board committees?
They were, but now we're changing that.
Yeah.
They were this last year, but now they will be next year.
I think we're working.
I know what's working.
It doesn't say complete.
where are we?
Accuracy.
I'm gonna say proficient.
Have we reviewed our existing policies and only adopted policies relevant to board responsibilities?
I think that's the one that's kicking us
Yeah, totally. I mean.
Yeah, you guys have your speaker.
Okay, so we're still at 4?
I believe so.
So that's a growth from last time.
3 points.
But I think by October, you'll want to be at 12.
I think so. For you, Sonia, we want to.
Thanks.
We'll call you when that happens.
So I'm gonna encourage you, if you're trying to, so let me just tell you what 12 is going to entail. So these different ad hoc committees we've had, like the superintendent evaluation, the community engagement. You will need an ad hoc committee, where two of you will spend time going through, and I'll work with you just like with the other ones, going through all of your policies and embarking on what we call a policy diet. So there is a time commitment for two of you to do this work. So before you commit to getting to proficient by the end of October, and not only will those two committees need to make recommendations, the board would have to then go through all of the voting process to, like, if you've got policies on the books that this committee recommends taking off or things to revise, you guys will have to go through your first reading, second reading on that.
Okay, and
So
so
you're
it's not actually through October, it's through September. That would be the end of quarter
Right,
three
we would
anyway.
be doing it in October.
Yes. And so I think backwards plan that it's gonna take, you've got 2 months of board meetings plus however many months two board members would want to take to develop those recommendations. So it's a bare minimum of a 3-month task, but that's if those two board members want to do a whole lot in a very compressed period of time.
Yes. So we're only gonna be at 4.
We're gonna stick with
4.
What I would encourage you, however, to do is you could start that process. Identify, I know you're gonna have a little bit of a change in your board composition. Identify 2 people who would want to embark on this and maybe start later in the summer, to then bring those recommendations to the board, say November for first reading and December for second reading, which means they would need to wrap their work up around September, around October. So you could, I guess what I'm saying here is you could start the work in quarter 3 to finish the work at the end of quarter 4.
And board operations.
All right, so, we're at a 4 and we expect to continue to still be at a 4 at the end of September. So objective 6, the board promotes active teamwork and advocacy. We were at a 0.
I think we're still at a 0. I think.
Using this.
Right. Or is our goal statement 0?
You don't want to go backwards.
But to look through the things for objective 6 and decide, are there things that you want to start working on to start making progress on objective 6? And similar to objective 5, it might be, we're not going to complete it by the end of the next quarter, but we want to start the work.
The ad hoc committee.
And the big buckets in objective 6 are doing your board operating procedures, a committee diet, which it sounds like you've already started, community engagement, which is a common theme that shows up again and again. Policy diet shows up a little bit here. And then one more thing I made a note of, so tiny in the margin of my page. Oh, you guys passed your conflict of interest and ethics policy.
Tonight, it's under the consent.
And so if you look under novice, it's in the middle, affirms that all members have signed the ethics and conflict of interest statement in the last 12 months.
So that needs to be printed and signed probably at the July board meeting along with oaths of office. Because everybody.
Yes. We can take it, we'll let you.
All right, so in the next quarter, do you want to be at a 2?
Gonna be tough with that community engagement.
There's
Although,
on the board.
gonna run.
So it is theoretically possible
Oh, yeah.
if your community engagement committee brings you all a recommendation for a plan by the end of this summer, it's theoretically possible that that plan could include at least one community engagement activity that would meet this requirement under does not meet. And for that to occur in September, like that maybe that becomes your launch of your community engagement plan, could happen in September, and then you would be able to meet that by the end of quarter 3. And then the other bucket under that, that's a bigger bucket, would be your board operating procedures. And that's another ad hoc committee to develop those. So it's going to be dependent on the bandwidth of the board on that. But I think you could theoretically do that by the end of September.
So say we want to be at a 2 next quarter and we don't reach a 2, what happens?
We have to work harder than next quarter.
I think you can get to a 6. You don't have any.
She's like that when you golf with her, you.
All right, so I've tallied the scores for quarter 2. What we're working on now, and I came up with a 43. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, mine works out.
and yeah, so we've shown growth and going from, so here's what I've got in next quarter, 12, 12, 13, 6, which would be an increase, 4, which would be stay the same, and 2, which would be an increase from 0. That gets to 41. That seems like a reasonable target.
Hey, Sue, I get it. So is it my responsibility to type this up for the board members and give this to them, or how does that go? Or
So I tonight have typed it straight. I'm gonna have to change it from quarter 1 to quarter 2 in OneDrive, but I typed it all in real time. But eventually this will be something that you all will be independent on. And I think that's just one of those internal processes for you guys to decide who's going to have ownership, right? Time tracking is going to be owned by a particular position, or has already been owned by a particular position on your board. And I think you just decide, is this something that you want to have that same board member who's doing time tracking complete this? If this is something you want the board chair to be responsible to do, or if it's something you want a task that you want to delegate to the superintendent or even the superintendent's designee. That's the ownership of conducting the evaluation belongs to the board. But unlike time tracking, I feel like filling in a form, it can be, as long as you're making sure someone's doing it and maintaining that record, I think you guys can just decide amongst yourselves how you want to handle that. And it might be just the easiest thing to do to have the time tracking person do it.
Not for the person doing the time. We need to wrap this up and move on. So we'll decide how the details of all that in the coming months, but so I would entertain a motion to approve the quarterly progress tracker as defined here for the second quarter of 2024. Sire moves, is there a second? Second. Nagel seconds. Any discussion? I think this will get easier as you go along, as you go along. And feel a lot easier for me. So, board members will have to decide this. All right, self-evaluation is approved. So we're moving on then to the consent agenda. Multiple items on the consent. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Is all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed say no.
Yeah, she did. Fire the.
Motion passes. Okay, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the items A through R on approve or receive as noted the items on the consent agenda? Heimbach moves, Sire seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed say no. Motion passes. The consent agenda items are approved, received, or rescinded as noted. Items in the reports for information only. No action needed there, so we'll move on to items for discussion and possible action. So I printed this for myself, but I'll have Shannon lead us through this. It looks like we need 3 motions. So.
So there were several ballots that had individuals listed for an office, but their residence was not in the correct spot on the ballot. After I visited, so I have notes on what we used, what we did not use. After speaking with School Boards Association, we still have to count that ballot for an individual, even if they're in the wrong location. If that person then were to get the highest votes, then, and they didn't live in the correct location they were voted for, then it would be deemed an open seat. So we need to go through these ballots that the board, the canvassing group didn't, or not the canvassing group, the election officials.
So that is something that's not here on our. It's the night.
I might be doing them backwards.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm gonna go through these first. I have two ballots that came in unsigned. And so I cannot match them to an application. I believe that is one of them that I need a motion to shred these because can't verify who they are.
okay, so that was, so the first bullet point here is actually gonna be 2 motions.
And that was. Yeah. Absentee ballots not signed. Motion to not open and shred the entire album. One was completed, but not, oh, okay. That's this one. I have it. It is completed. I called the individual on the night to come in and sign it before the election, and he failed to do so. So therefore, I cannot compare signature to the application.
Okay, so I'm seeking a motion to not open these 3 absentee ballots and shred them.
Correct.
So Day moves, is there a second? Second. Nagel seconds. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll. Oh, do you want?
Nope, that's fine. Brian Sayer,
Yes.
Sheila Nagel,
Yes.
Rhonda Day,
Yes.
Monica Heimbach, Sonia Meal.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Then there is the next bullet point regarding one absentee ballot and noted that this did not appear that the signatures match.
Okay, so I have one ballot here. And so when I received the envelope, I thought the signature on the envelope was not consistent with the signature on the application. I reviewed the information that I've gotten from the school board. I can call the person and say, you need to come in and verify your envelope or the envelope. So, which I did. This person came in, they gave me a copy of their ID. They looked at the envelope and they said, that is my ballot. So I said, okay, I cannot put it in with the rest of the absentee ballots, but we can open it tonight. And I did not receive any other absentee ballots properly posted after the election. So if we open this one ballot, the other 5 of you will know who it is. Since I'm the only one that knows who this is, I would ask that I can open it. And I will stick the ballot with the rest of these that we don't know who they are.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to treat this ballot in the manner that our business manager suggests. Heimbach moves. Sayer seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Ron Naday,
Yes.
Monica Heimbach,
Yes.
Sheila Nagel,
Yes.
Brian Sayer,
Yes.
Sonia Meal.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. So
Okay.
now we'll open that and we will include that with
I will.
coming here back. We can see you.
And then don't pick up on the camera.
We can't.
I don't know that you guys can read it, but.
Gonna zoom in.
All right. Okay, mixed it all up. All right, so now I have these ballots and I will keep a tally. I have out of town from our tally sheets that was sent in your board packet. I have it listed as out of town and in town. I have Monica out of town at 201 ballots, Jay for 55. In town, I have Patty Jo Carlson, and out in town, John Bakke. So now I'm going to add. This one shows Bill Schmitz as out of town. I'll give him one ballot. This one shows John Bakke for out of town. I will give him one ballot for tick.
For out of town.
For out of town. And it shows Jay Harris in town. This one shows John Bakke out of town. I will give him another tick, and Jay Harris in town. He gets another tick. This one shows Jay Harris in town. He will receive another tick. This one shows, the board or the electors or the poll workers didn't take the top vote. They used Patty Jo and the yes. but they were not clear. They didn't want to make a decision on which which built-in oval to use. This would need a vote itself.
Okay.
Or if you guys would like to not use the top part of the ballot.
So the bottom two have already been counted.
Correct.
So I would be seeking a motion to either reject the top race altogether or to accept
Right.
the write-in vote. Or whatever the motioner wants to move.
I'm gonna make a motion not to accept it. They should have asked for a new ballot.
Is
I'll
there a
second
second? Nagel moves not to accept that vote on the top race, and it was seconded by Cider. And the discussion is that the voters should have asked for another ballot. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Rhonda Day,
Yes.
Sheila Nagel,
Yes.
Monica Heimbach,
I'm going to abstain.
Brian Sayer,
Yes.
Sonny Meal.
Yes, the motion passes 4-0 with Heimbach abstaining.
This one again shows John Bakke out of town and Jay Harris in town. This shows Nick Harris out of town. This shows Jay Harris in town. This shows Jay Harris out of town. Jay Harris.
Was that counted?
This one was not counted. Plus John Bakke out of town
Oh,
and a yes to the newspaper.
Wait a minute.
that was the absentee ballot.
Oh,
Oh,
And this one shows Hitler as a out of town.
So we have to count that one even though it's not a person.
Yes, yes, you do. I asked that specific question because the person voted and it,
All right, so then what is our next step? You're gonna read
Okay.
out the final tallies of,
yes,
with including the tallies you just added. And then we need to certify that as the final.
correct. All right, so I show the final tally of out of town as Monica 201, Jay Harris 56, Bill Schmitz 1, John Bakke 3, Nick Harris 1, and Hitler 1. And I have in town Patty Jo Carlson for 192. John Bakke, 57. Jay Harris, 5. And then it increased the newspaper to report the minutes into the newspaper to 247. No of 25.
All right. I'm seeking a motion to certify the the election results as reported by our business manager after those additional votes that we approved. Sire moves. Is there a second? Second. Day seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Say, great job on this, Shannon. I can't remember us ever having, well, we did have that one. That wasn't quite as, there was only one ballot. That was, all right, no further discussion? Please call the roll.
Rhonda Day,
Yes.
Brian Sire,
Yes.
Sheila Nagel,
Yes.
Monica Heimbach.
Yes.
Sonny Meal.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. The election results are certified. Congratulations, Monica Heimbach. You are officially elected to that out-of-town position east of Highway 1. And to Patty Jo Carlson, elected to the board position from the city of Holmes. With that, we move on to the final item of business, the Hall of Fame induction recommendations. You know, the last couple of years, I've had a really nice little summary of the recommendation made by the committee. And you know what? This year, all I really have to say is 2 words. Tom Van Orny. And his daughter Jillian is was the nominator, and just before the meeting, I texted her to let her know that the board would be voting on this, and that if she wanted to tune in, she could, and she has, so I'm pleased with that. And I have been, as I've done this the last few years, I give that person that was the nominator, I tell them they get to notify the inductee. So I don't know, do you think that he's gonna believe her? So with that, I'm going to take my presidential right to make, I move that this board approve Tom Van Orny as the Hall of Fame inductee for 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Sheila. Is there any discussion? 42 years as our business manager. Yeah, mentoring other business managers, some great stuff in here. She said when paychecks were still printed, he'd personally walk around and deliver them to every single teacher and would stop to chat. It was the highlight of their day, and it must have taken forever to deliver all the checks. Brought in to assist with tricky HR situations, raised 5 kids, all of whom graduated from here at Oaks High School. And of course, always volunteered to hand out programs at football games. So she says he truly made the school and community of Oaks a better place to live, learn, and play. Of course, he left us in 2018 to Valley City, and he now enjoys time with his family and local sports activities, puzzles, reading, and spending time with kids and grandkids. So, any other discussion? Well deserved. Yes. All right. Any further discussion?
He's retired.
Oh, okay.
We want him as a deacon.
Oh.
Please call the roll.
Look what's
Sheila Nagel,
Yes.
Monica Heimbach,
Yes.
Rhonda Day,
Yes.
Brian Sire,
Yes.
Sonny Meal.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. I don't know if Jillian would like to say anything. I'd give her a minute.
I didn't know if I'd be able to say anything, but just thank you guys. You know, I think our dad is, you know, he holds Oaks such a special place in his heart, and I hope you guys feel the same for him, but he's gonna die when he hears this. I mean, he's gonna cry, first of all, and then he's just gonna be so happy. So thank you guys. I appreciate the consideration.
Thank you for nominating him. I was thinking, is he kind of just like Joe Mauer? Didn't Joe get in on the first ballot?
It's valid all of it.
Yeah. So, looking forward to the ceremony. September, it'll be Monday of coronation. September, I think that, I don't have my.
Got that memorized, Greg?
Anyway, you'll hear from us and, please, make sure as many of your family members can come as possible because it will be a great night. So thank you for nominating.
Thanks.
All right, with that, my agenda says there are future meetings, Wednesday, July 10th, a 7 p.m. meeting. Special, you have a retreat scheduled on July the 30th at 6, and then August 16th, so. Good luck, everyone. I've enjoyed it. You're in great shape. Got a great team. No, I'm gonna declare the meeting adjourned at 8:59. We made it in under 2 hours.